Alright, it is time for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix Observations 2023 edition. The working title for this one is probably going to be Grid Hatchings, Fool's Gold, and Perez. That may or may not change during the edit, we'll see what happens. One minor tidbit to address, the national anthem, the Saudi Arabian national anthem that went out. I don't know who's managing this stuff, but the instruments are out of tune. It's probably some covert warfare, clandestine warfare, to be honest. To be honest with you, because they want Saudi Arabia, they just want the Middle East in general to look incompetent on some level, because, well, those who are militantly Muslim, they want them to look incompetent for whatever reason. And this is not the video for it anyway, but that was interesting, just that little bit that happened there. But otherwise, on to the actual Grand Prix and the weekend in general, I suppose. So we're starting with Red Bull and Perez. He's gotten a win. Now, I would have said I did in fact say that I would have bet on Perez pulling something out in Saudi Arabia if he brought his A game. And even perhaps if something happened to Mclaren and Verstappen. Both happened. Both of those happened. Now, does this mean Checo Perez is now going to make some sort of title challenge or what have you? No, I don't particularly think so. I think he'll just be more solid at all the street circuits. Well, Baku remains to be seen. Why Baku? Because it's not. Although the race does actually happen in some streets, and it's got some very unique pieces of track, it's not actually a circuit where Perez is going to flex his knowledge of the loud pedal over Mclaren Verstappen. It's just not going to count for as much over there. But at other street circuits, such as likewise at Miami and Australia, it's not going to count for as much. Will be interesting to see what Perez does in Australia, mind you. But really, Perez, once again, I'm looking for him to have a good weekend at Monaco. Will be interesting if he has a good weekend at Monaco and it's a dry weekend. Then it's very interesting. I'd like to see what Jos does in the post-race paddock if Checo were to pull that one off. And Singapore again. Perez, I would expect him to be on form over there again. But, well, we just have to see what happens. Australia will be an interesting place to watch. This whole Perez versus Verstappen thing will be very interesting there. I don't expect... I say this with all the teams. I'd say this for all the teams. Generally, I don't expect any sort of mechanical issues to be repeated the next Grand Prix over, though Ferrari, I don't know. Ferrari just want to be silly. We'll get to Ferrari later in the video. But otherwise, this is very interesting that Checo Perez has actually won at Saudi Arabia. Very interesting. This part of the title wasn't actually for Perez, but, well, is Perez Fool's Gold? On some level he is. But on another level, he's some sort of unknown quantity, all the same. So, we'll really have to see what happens this season at Red Bull, and really, Perez can't actually put a step wrong if the Red Bulls are to find themselves on the same piece of track at any moment. What do I mean by that? Well, after this whole drive shaft failure for Mclaren Verstappen, it became topical during the race that that they've got a whole 17 mile per hour boost on whatever their top speed delta was for the weekend. For that weekend, it will be very interesting to see what their setup is doing at Baku, and even at Monza on some level, and especially at Spa, when we go Spa and like Catalonia. It's just going to be interesting to see what it does everywhere. Even Australia's the new Australia has its whole super long, well, the high speed section. I can't call it a straight, it's curved in both ways. Anyway, with their 17 mile per hour boost on their DRS, and that will vary from circuit to circuit, things might get a little heated at Red Bull if these two find themselves on the same piece of track. Things may indeed get quite a bit heated. Red Bull are perhaps fortunate that one, Verstappen has had this drive shaft issue in qualifying, and two, that Perez was actually on his A game and he kept Verstappen well away from DRS range. Right, it's not even worth mentioning DRS range because he's kept him at a solid 4 or 5 seconds behind. And I suppose the radio chatter at Red Bull might be of interest to people. I'm still not sure how to interpret that 33.6 plus 4. The way I'm reading that is you've got 4/10 of a second error margin. I mean, Perez, he rated how he rated. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. But yeah, it will be interesting to see if Red Bull can actually handle that dynamic. If things do get too spicy and they collide, they might collide at some instance this season. I doubt it though. I really doubt it. I doubt it because Perez has too much to lose. So yeah, just on that, I doubt it. But if they were to collide, well, we saw during Vettel and Webber years that, well, it wasn't really about who was right or who was wrong at Red Bull. At the end of the day, Dr. Marco, he was going to side with his guy, and that was Vettel back there. Right now, it's obviously Maximilian Verstappen, and they might be hoping that Nick de Vries can fast track himself into a Red Bull seat, but we'll see what happens there. But otherwise, man, there's not much to report at Red Bull. A little spice, Jos Verstappen, a little cold. A little cold in the post-race paddock. It's funny that there's, well, the whole internet space, the whole webosphere has just been pretty toxic in general. But it's funny that, well, people are trying to claim that Jos Verstappen that Jos Verstappen actually did congratulate Checo Perez. I mean, yeah, given enough time, but first he had to make sure that the cameras caught him scowling at Checo Perez. That's what he had to make sure, and he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. But anyway, I might make, may or may not, I probably will make it at some point, because it's actually an interesting topic. I'd even like to explore it. And it's going to be on sports fathers, I suppose, but anyway. Anyway, who would be the candidates for that? Jos Verstappen, Anthony Hamilton, LeVar Ball, and who's Checo's old man? I've got to get his name. But anyway, other than whatever wundertech that Adrian Newey and his team have cooked up for Red Bull and their DRS, well, there's not really much else to report at Red Bull. Anyway, well done for Perez on a very good win. Well done to Maximilian Verstappen on a very good recovery drive. Do we call it a recovery drive? Do we really do that? But anyway, so moving on to Aston Martin. And the whole kerfuffle around Aston Martin has been this whole grid hatching situation with Alonso. Here's how I see it. It's been interesting watching the drivers being very sporting with how they park their cars in the grid hatchings, right? It's been interesting watching them doing that and being disciplined and all of that. But at some level, that was a whole part of the art. I mean, if you from old F1, do we call it retro already? It's like 90s already retro. Who knows? But if you're from Retro F1, after they had solved the clutch, so before we just had cars rolling on the starts and all of that. But if you're from Retro F1, it was a part of the art to park the car in cheeky ways in the grid hatchings to try and get an advantage. That was a whole part of the art. If you watch the late 90s, I mean, that was start of the race was half the show just because of that. And has Alonso actually gained some sort of meaningful advantage from doing this? I don't believe so. But all that aside, I mean, considering the technical changes that have happened to the cars and the tires over time, and now there are these wheel arches and what have you, the Flappy Birds, can the drivers still really see? Can they still really see that far out? They've just had to extend the yellow marker, the foot marker, right? That yellow marker that's on the grid hatchings. The F1 driver is supposed to use that as a marker, as a reference. That's where their feet are supposed to be, and that's when the car is in the grid hatching. It's supposed to, your feet supposed to be in line with that line. If you accomplish that, then okay, you're where you're supposed to be. But while Alonso he accomplished that much, but now he's not actually in the grid hatching as much as they would want him in the grid hatching. I mean, back in the day, that passed. That was alright. I suppose nowadays they've got all this extra tech going around the grid to detect things like false starts and what have you. So I suppose there is that sort of... So I suppose that does have to be acknowledged on some level. But all the same, the team didn't complain. The team and driver didn't complain all too loudly about being given a penalty over that. But then the real kerfuffle came when there were claims that the Aston Martin pit crew had started working on the car before the 5-second penalty was served. And crazy enough, they... I don't know what film they've got. What film are they looking at? The film that I watched. Right, the rear jack was absolutely not touching the car. It was very close to touching, but not touching. So it was very silly that there had to be a whole kerfuffle about that in post-race. But otherwise, Alonso finished where he was expected to finish. Will be interesting to see if this Aston Martin can challenge the Red Bulls. Here's the thing with the whole Red Bull car. I'm not particularly sure where that car is going to have an off weekend. Where is that car weak exactly? Right, I can't particularly see that. And I can only see Aston Martin actually challenging for a win at a track where the Red Bull arrives and it's weak. I'm just not seeing that. Maybe something happens in Miami with the road surface or something, but I'm just not seeing that. What else happened with Aston Martin? Stroll, he has retired. I suppose his brakes were smoking. I'm assuming it's his brakes. Never got a good angle off it. Whatever. Director is sleeping. Alright, fucking TV director is asleep. But yeah, Stroll's brakes, I'm assuming it's his brakes, were smoking on the grid, and then he's had to retire the car halfway around the circuit with a brake. Well, I'm assuming it's a brake issue, but with a brake issue. Now, part of me does wonder if this is some sort of reparations to Red Bull for aping their design last season and gaining whatever knowledge Aston Martin gained by doing so. Alright, and they said, okay, listen, if something happens to your guy and he's finding himself down the field somewhat, we'll just trigger a safety car for you guy, don't worry. Yeah, part of me does wonder if some of that is at play here, but alright, Stroll has retired. Was the safety car a fixed safety car, an orchestrated safety car? Who knows? But at the end of the day, regardless of all of that, Mercedes and Ferrari, they're very lucky that there's only one Aston Martin finisher. You know, they're very lucky here in Jeddah. I don't expect that to remain the same. Well, for the rest of the season, and we'll just have to see what happens in that regard. But otherwise, yeah, I suppose the ones who would have been most disappointed, this is why I actually have this whole fixed safety car idea. The ones who would have been most disappointed with the whole, with the safety car were Aston Martin, because who knows, Alonso might have actually been able to finish ahead of Maximilian. Or we might have gotten some film. But anyway. On to Mercedes. And at Mercedes, things have been quite eventful despite an uneventful race. Oh man, this is a funny team to follow right now. But anyway, the big news before Sunday, I suppose, was that Angela Cullen has been let go, has been fired. How do I say it? Now, Angela Cullen, she is a Sir Lewis Hamilton hire, right? Mercedes have nothing to do with her salary, with her employment. That was all being paid for with Sir Lewis Hamilton's own bank. So it's Sir Lewis Hamilton himself that's fired her. So what is Sir Lewis Hamilton doing exactly? Well, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Is he going to find himself a new MK handler? Who knows? Is he leaving it all up to fate? And he will see where the chips fall? Who knows? Likewise, his fashion designer is retiring. Right, this guy made so much money, now I'm just saying, I'm calling it a day here, lads. But it's a bit of a storm around Sir Lewis Hamilton. Never mind the car itself, which is the actual fool's gold that's in the working title right now. I suppose I have to put it in the title because it's actually been referenced twice now. But yeah, Sir Lewis Hamilton, he was dominating the headlines leading into this Grand Prix. And well, there's not really much to say about it until things play out. Just that, you need people to know that it's Sir Lewis Hamilton's that's his own hire and fire that he's orchestrated over there. Mind you, Angela Cullen herself, she probably just want to go be with the kids at home or something. She probably made her bank. She made her bank by now. But anyway, Sir Lewis Hamilton obviously does not like cheddar. There's something about the circuit he doesn't like. The circuit is a bit of a spooky circuit. The circuit is indeed a bit spooky. I am expecting some sort of either a pile-up or just some high-speed accidents between the barriers where there's not really a lot of space with the barriers to take place somewhere on that circuit. And well, we'll just have to see what happens when that happens. But otherwise, George Russell, he is better qualified than Sir Lewis Hamilton anyway, so that was never going to be the qualifying that was important. But what is important from the qualifying is that, well, this Mercedes car is competing for the third or fourth best car on the grid. Because of course they're going to be in competition with Ferrari all season. They're going to be swapping places all season. Some weekends Ferrari will be faster, other weekends Mercedes will be faster. And that will be the story of the season, really. At least for these two teams. Has the tyre strategy mattered? No, the tyre strategy hasn't really mattered. It was interesting that Sir Lewis Hamilton was starting on the hard tyres. It would have been interesting if the safety car were called out later, right? Maybe around lap 30. Or let me not say lap 30, let me say around lap 28. Somewhere around there, 28, 27, plus minus 2. Would have been interesting with Sir Lewis Hamilton starting on the hard tyres if that happened, but that's not what happened. Safety car came out on lap 18, 17, 18, and that was perfect for everyone who started on medium tyres. Worst case scenario if you started on hard tyres. And then Sir Lewis Hamilton is on the mediums for the back end of the Grand Prix. It's not so with Sir Lewis Hamilton being on the mediums, I have to ponder if it would have been a wasted exercise actually letting him actually getting on the blower with urgency to George Russell and telling him to get out the way. If George Russell were a smarter racer, I suppose he'll learn this himself in a debrief somewhere. But if George Russell were a smarter racer, he would have let Sir Lewis Hamilton by and said, go and try and force something out of Alonso and his tyres over there. And he would have tried to hold on with some DRS. And either way, if Sir Lewis Hamilton were able to make something happen with his mediums before they wore off, George Russell would have been in a better position for it. Either Mercedes are going to say, alright, that we've tried this whole thing, so Lewis Hamilton's tyres are going off now, let George back through, let him take the position back, he's still got tyres to push on. That would have been one scenario, or the other scenario, so Lewis Hamilton actually gets past Alonso and Alonso's had to drive a little bit harder on his tyres. But he'll learn that in a debrief. He's already learned that in the debrief, no doubt. But otherwise, what is it really for? For 4th place? No, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. And it likely doesn't really matter to Sir Lewis Hamilton. George Russell was interesting that he actually decided to ignore the radio message. He had his reasons. He thought Alonso still had to serve penalty. Alright. But once he was told no, he said, I'll just drive faster then. All power to him. But this is just the whole, I said this last season, post Imola, I think. This is all new to Russell. You see, for Russell versus Sir Lewis Hamilton, right, for George, the win is so close. It's never been this close for him before. The win is so, it's right there. It's really right there. He's just got to get past 1, 2, 3 cars. He gets the win. It's so close for him. For Sir Lewis Hamilton, who's been at the front for a decade, for his whole career, really, but for a decade, I mean, the win is so far. He knows the win is so far away right now. They're nowhere near. And this is the fool's gold of this Mercedes car. Some weekends they might be close to the Aston Martins, maybe even the Red Bulls, who knows? But by the time they are where the Red Bulls were 2 months ago, the Red Bulls are already a whole 2 miles down the road again. And the revolution in the whole zero pods design was supposed to be that it's got the zero pods. And now, with people saying this way and that way, the nerds saying this way and that way, oh, it's not as simple as changing the side pods. Well, of course, you change everything that is related to changing the side pods, which includes however the internals are laid out. I'm supposing that they've gone with something a little more slimmer in their internal, in how the organs of the car are actually set up compared to, everyone else, and that would have some effect. Likewise with their floor and and the stiffness that they have to actually work into the floor to make it actually serviceable with the spec of car that they're running. I mean, there's just too many question marks around the concept. Some way more question marks around it than Ferrari. But otherwise, for Mercedes, really, either James Allison is gonna make the concept bang, or, and it's funny, this whole James Allison thing. People are gonna flame me up. Oh, you've never been an F1 designer. Da 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 da. But James Allison has never really been that highly rated or sought after a technical designer. He's never been chief technical officer. He's never been the best one on market. He's been fortunate that, he was put into the Ferrari role and he got to handle a whole raft of cash to make a car. And then he got to do the same thing again with Mercedes. He's very fortunate in that regard, but otherwise he's never really done anything revolutionary with the cars. It's all good to say that Mercedes dropped DAS and whatever else they tried to bring out. It's all good to say that, but there's just geniuses all over the Mercedes operation at that time. You know, anyone could have come up with it. Anyone. Someone's going to take credit, and probably all of them will take credit, say, oh no, that was my idea actually. So, you know, the whole James Allison fix, I'm just not convinced by it. This James Allison panacea, I just don't see it happening. But we'll see what happens. Maybe James Allison will tell them the real, and mind you, he should have told them the real. He oversaw a whole part of this zero pods thing anyway. He should have told them right there from the jump that this ain't gonna be it. But he should have told them right from the jump that no, this isn't gonna be it. He was in position to do so. He had voice to do so. And then they gave him this whole gardening leave situation, you know. Anyway, not convinced by anything around this Merc car. This Mercedes car is here to fool you and Mercedes. Right, it's gonna have weekends like this. Oh, it's so close to the Aston Martins. Not really. Oh, it's ahead of the Ferrari as well. That's the competition. But anyway, this segment could have probably been its own video. I might actually still make it its own video. But you see, Mercedes right now, aside from the car, right, aside from whatever issues the car is going to spit out, and the technical department, the engineering department, and all of that, aside from all of those issues, right, the biggest problem Mercedes have right now in light of this whole Grand Prix and George Russell pretending he can't hear the radio, the biggest problem that Merc have right now is that Niki Lauda is no longer there. He's the guy who they most miss having in the room. Right. Let's say that Mercedes are not listening to Sir Lewis Hamilton. Let's say that they're not listening to Sir Lewis Hamilton on feedback of the car, what have you. They were probably doing the same thing when Nico Rosberg was there, and it probably would have been Niki Lauda who pulled the engineers aside. You know, he would have sat in on one of the debriefs and then taken what's happening. And then after the meeting, he pulls a few seniors aside and says, "Hey, listen. I got you the best talent of the generation that's on the grid right now, and you guys ain't listening to him. Why did I waste all that energy? Why did I stress myself getting you this guy if you're not gonna listen?" He probably would have ran something like that back then. Now he's not there, and you know, we I'm sure everyone's seen this. What is the movie called? Is it called Drive? I don't know, but the Niki Lauda and James Hunt movie. I'm sure everyone's seen that movie. And I'm sure everyone's heard the story of how Niki Lauda gets to drive the Ferrari for the first time. And he gets back to the pit road and he says, this car's a shitbox. And of course, one of the developers, one of the engineers says, "You can't say that, it's a Ferrari." Well, you gotta have people like this in the organization who don't care that, oh, it's got the AMG Mercedes badge on it. They don't care that it's got the Ferrari badge on it. Who cares what they say you can and cannot say? You say it the way it is. They probably need someone like that at Mercedes again, who's not one of the drivers. But anyway, this is all going to be a real test on Toto Wolff. Now we get to test Toto Wolff for real. What is Toto going to do now that Niki Lauda is gone and he has to manage a whole bundle of talent? What is he going to do? So Lewis Hamilton is obviously going to make it very easy for him by not holding George Russell to standards. So Lewis Hamilton should have been on the blower here. Should have been on the blower. Hey, get this kid the fuck out of my way. You know, he should have done that. But he didn't. I suppose in the past, Niki Lauda would have done. Well, Niki Lauda would have read everyone the right act. You know, if there came a situation post-race and Rosberg or someone didn't want to let Sir Lewis Hamilton through, or Sir Lewis Hamilton didn't want to let Rosberg through, he would have read either of them the right act. When they collide, you know, you've got the fucking 2-time world champion, is he 3-time world champion? I'll get my details sorted on another day, but you've got multiple world champion Niki Lauda over here. And he's looking at the film of you two drivers crashing, and he says, okay, explain to me what... Both of you explain to me what the hell y'all doing here. Because I'm watching... You know, he's watching 10 million go up in smoke. And now he has to explain to the bigwigs. Because his whole job is keeping the drivers in check. But anyway, this is where Wolf now gets tested. Now, Mr. Wolf, now is when you will be tested. It was far easier when Lauda was there, no doubt, because you didn't have to run any of this stuff. Now he's not there. Rest in peace, Niki Lauda, and boy, Toto, you're gonna have to earn your salt now. You're gonna have to, you're really gonna have to earn your salt. But anyway, Ferrari time, and while there's been another ECU change for Leclerc at Ferrari. Now this is huge, right? This is huge. Why is it huge? Someone might say, oh, you're making a big deal, it's just a fucking ECU. It's huge because everyone is running the same ECU. Everyone has the same ECU, bro. Literally everyone has the same ECU. It's been mandated since Sir Lewis Hamilton actually entered the sport, and traction control got banned, like properly banned, right? There had been attempts to ban traction control before. They weren't able to. Mclaren got the standard ECU deal, and they've been making the standard ECU for F1 since. So for Ferrari to lose 2 ECUs, you only get 2 of these per season. So yeah, if they have to pick up another ECU, sometime they probably will at some point. But if they have to pick up another ECU in the future, well, it's another penalty. Never mind whatever else might go wrong with the car. But the fact that a part that everyone gets the same spec of parts. The fact that it's that part that's gone bang twice on Leclerc's car within 2 Grand Prix. Excuse me, Ferrari. What exactly is going on there? I'll tell you what's going on there. It's another learning season for Ferrari. I shouldn't actually call it a learning season. It's more like a whole root and branch operation, to be frank with you. Alright, Bassir's gonna go in, he's gonna clear house, clear the decks, and have a whole restructuring of Ferrari. We'll see exactly what he does with it. But well, at least he's actually moving on things. At least he's actually moving on things. Things are not gonna move so quick at Mercedes, I promise you that. But it's essentially going to be another learning season for Ferrari. They're going to go through a whole restructuring campaign over there. But there are some good tidings for them in that, well, they'll be trading places with Mercedes throughout the season. Right, and both of these two, the Mercedes and Ferrari, they're so fortunate. I've said this already in the video, but they're so fortunate that Stroll has retired from this Grand Prix just for the sake of their optics. They're so fortunate, because without that the Mercedes are trying to catch up to Stroll for 4th place, right? Without that, the Ferraris are finishing they're so and there's going to be other Grand Prix. Mercedes are going to finish 7th and 8th. Ferrari are going to finish 7th and 8th. There's going to be some Grand Prix like that. Alpine might even threaten both of them, because they both Ferrari and Mercedes are trying out these fruity concepts on the side pods, and well, it remains to be seen just how far those go. Some people might point to Haas for Ferrari. Oh, look at Haas! Look what they're doing. They're finding their way up. Well, the midfield after Alpine is going to be switching up every single Grand Prix. All right, at Australia, McLaren might have a good Grand Prix. Suddenly everyone's, oh my god, look at McLaren. They're right back there. And they haven't put anything on the car. Alright, but Ferrari, Mercedes, Ferrari have their reasons, I suppose. They actually have gone through a major change in their hierarchy, whereas Mercedes don't actually have this type of reason. But anyway, the time for Ferrari to strike was last season. That was the time. That's when the iron was hot. That's why it was over. It was over for Binotto when he said it was a learning season. When I saw that report, that's when I said this is over for this guy. There's no way. There's no way you can be running Ferrari. You're literally in a championship fight and you say it's a learning season? No. That was the time to strike. That was the time to light a fire under everyone's ass back at engineering and tell them to fix the damn engine. That was the time. Because you don't know which concept is actually going to, well, people had their educated guesses this way and that way, but really you don't know which concepts are going to actually stand the test of time and be good the next season and develop into the next season and all that. You don't actually know that going in. So to think that with this whole exotic concept, oh, this will be a learning season, it's gonna bang just as well next year. No sir, that don't happen. And Ferrari are playing the same game Mercedes are. And you can't fix it with money now. You can't just throw money at it to fix it. Alright, the rules come in to stop that happening. Mind you, some people skirt the rules here and there. You know, I suppose everyone should do it in that case. But anyway. Do I expect Ferrari to be... well, I do expect Ferrari to be better than Mercedes in the next Grand Prix in Australia. But it's really neither here nor there, either way. Because at this point they're hoping to catch up to Aston Martin, and Aston Martin gonna have more money than all of these guys to spend. All of these guys. I suppose this season we will learn if this whole budget cap thing is going to work. This is the season. Alpine find themselves in a bit of a no man's land. What I mean by that, I mean that they're in the same spot that McLaren were in last season. Well, at the start of last season. It's just that Aston Martin have gotten so far ahead with recent developments that the no man's land has shifted down a position. It's not Mercedes or Ferrari that are in the no man's land. They've got each other as friends, right? Red Bull are in the best no man's land. No one can touch them out at front. Aston Martin, trying to get forward, trying not to fall backwards. Either sort of outcome is in reach. Alpine, they're in the real no man's land. No one behind them is going to challenge them, and they're not going to be fast enough to challenge anyone ahead of them. I wonder how professional they can keep things. But anyway, not much to say about Alpine. Decent race, Ocon ahead of Gasly. Wouldn't have bet on that, tell you what. I wouldn't have bet on that. But anyway, Sundry observation starting here. I suppose I should have started with the Alpine. But anyway, Magnussen has managed an overtake on Tsunoda at the death for points. Why is that point on offer? Because Stroll has retired. Right, Leclerc was going to drive through to a healthy enough position. No matter whatever penalties he got, that was going to happen. And likewise for Verstappen. So, okay, Magnussen has pulled out. His overtake on Tsunoda at the death is a great point for Haas. There's not really much of interest Haas can show me this season. I would be interested in seeing how they develop from Ferrari's starting point. Although it wouldn't be the white Ferrari this season, it would be the black Ferrari. Still not entirely convinced that it is aping the Ferrari as convincingly as people want to say. But anyway, good point for Haas. I suppose Gunther is happy that he has no accident damage to pay on on Hulkenberg's car. And it's on to the next weekend for them. We can't really call them midfield, by the way. Right, you can't really. Haas next Grand Prix, they might be where McLaren are. Alright, but anyway. Alpha Tauri. Tsunoda's shock at being overtaken at the death by Magnussen was heard on radio. Part of me feels he's being done dirty, either by F1 management or by Red Bull management, the one or the other. Why is that? Because Ayumu Iwasa is way more exciting a talent, and both probably want to get him in there. Both parties probably want to get him in there in a hurry. So this season there might be some goofy optics around Tsunoda. We'll see what happens with him. Likewise, if De Vries demonstrates to be, demonstrably quicker than Tsunoda, expect some sort of ramping up on the optics. We'll see exactly what happens there. I suppose even Honda would want Ayumu Iwasa in the seat now. But anyway, we'll see what happens with Tsunoda. The heat's going to be turned up on him this season in ways he was not expecting. Well, remains to be seen what happens. His best bet is just beating De Vries. Alright, forget about trying to beat any of the other cars, just beat De Vries. And you'll probably come through on the other side of all of this. You might have a very long career at AlphaTauri, like Gasly, and then you move somewhere else later. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, I mean, the alternative is win a race somewhere, anywhere. But yeah, the difficulty of that is gonna ramp up very soon. Never mind how difficult it is already. But anyway, after that we move on to Alfa Romeo, and we've got Guan Yu Zhou bullying some of the rookies with his season's worth of F1 knowledge. And Bottas was running a live testing session. Right, what was probably the most informative moment for Guan Yu Zhou was actually that crash at Silverstone. That was probably the most informative moment for him, all things considered, because even with the roll hoop failing, he still got out the car unscathed. Helmet might have had a few scratch marks on it, but that was really it. So he perhaps has a little bit more bravery around the streets of Jeddah, than any of the other rookies can muster their first time there. And then some on top of that. Bottas running his live testing session for Alfa Romeo. I mean, it is what it is with Alfa Romeo. I don't particularly mind it. With commentary talking about Audi and their involvement the last time out. Right, at this point it has to be assumed that it's basically Audi in all but name already, and they're running Audi sessions. Go get this data for us on this tire, go get XYZ for us, and that's how their season's probably gonna run. But anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll see. It might be Zhou on testing duty next time out, but we'll see what happens. Why am I saying that for Alfa Romeo in particular? Because this is usually when Alfa Romeo are at their strongest at the start of the season. Well, when Sauber are at their strongest. Is right now at the start of the season. I suppose they're probably going to have a stellar Grand Prix in Australia, maybe even a double points finish if something weird happens up at the front with some retirements. Who knows? We'll see. But otherwise, this is when Alfa Romeo / Sauber, soon to be Audi, are supposed to be good. Mind you, this recession is going to turn up. They're not calling it a recession yet, it's crazy. But, you know, when they do call it a recession, we'll see if Audi stay committed to this whole F1 thing. We'll see if they really stay committed. I suppose they have to with budget caps existing, but it remains to be seen if the budget cap even stays standing into the next set of regulations. And onto Williams. Albon has had his brake issue. It's a little bit suspect that he's driven past the pits. If I give him the best interpretation possible, he's probably going to do another lap out on circuit and try and slow down the car a bit more, so that he doesn't have to rely on the brakes as much when actually entering the pits. That's best interpretation I can give him. Otherwise, it's a bit bizarre to drive past the pits, all things considered. But anyway, Logan Sargent, he has had his composure tested in Jeddah. Has he perhaps failed the composure test? Well, I mean, he's a rookie all the same. Right? Jeddah will be a bit of a tester for rookies coming into the sport. Test of composure and bravery. But yeah, Sargent failed his composure test here in Jeddah. Does it matter? No, not particularly. He's gonna have a good Grand Prix. Well, somewhere very soon. We go USA twice, so he's gonna get home boost twice, and we'll see what happens with him then. But otherwise, not really much to report on the whole rookie watch. At McLaren, Norris has been told not to make things difficult for Piastri, so he's been given a whole team order over here. That yes, you're racing, but not really racing, just let him by if you could. And he did, and then Piastri did the next best thing and even overtook Logan Sargent. Well, I suppose that might have gotten the internet ringing. That might have gotten the internet spinning up a whole storm very quickly. Is it of great import? No, not really. It's not really for anything important in the race at that. I mean, what positions were they fighting for? The very tail end of the finishes? No, it's not really for anything important. Right, fighting over 16th place. It's not all that important. And I suppose there's been the whole staff turnover at McLaren. McLaren needs to get their priorities straight. It's really that simple. I mean, the fact that they've even gone and developed some tech to run LCD screens in the car so they can have multiple advertisers is so wild. Right, it's so wild to me. And it's very obvious in post that Ron Dennis was trying to prevent, this sort of ownership coming in. Well, it didn't happen. It was Ron Dennis who got ousted by everyone else. Because they wanted easy money. And well, I suppose they got that easy money now. Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. It's whatever. This is McLaren now, I guess. If they make a good car, it will be completely by accident. I mean, let me not slander them. So we'll see what what their new technical team produces once they've assembled it. But otherwise, it's really poor optics for McLaren at present. Really poor. And if they stay as bad, they're not going to stay as bad as they are. well, especially into next season, they're not going to stay as bad as they currently are. But if they were to stay as unconvincing as they are as an outfit, as a racing outfit, even, right? Never mind the car they produce, but as a racing outfit, you can produce a bad car as a good racing outfit. Ferrari have done it, Red Bull have done it, Mercedes have done it, a far better iteration of McLaren has done it. Williams have done it when they were actually competing for race wins. You know, you can be a good race outfit and produce a bad car. But to be a bad race outfit and you produce a bad car on top of that, I mean, there's really no road to recovery. Never mind when Audi come in full time. Right? Never mind when Porsche find someone who's willing to try their project. Never mind all of those situations when they happen. Right? Porsche, they might pair up with Aston Martin, all things considered now. Never mind if the 11th team actually gets over the line. If the 11th team gets over the line, well, you know there's going to be a 12th team 2 or 3 years after that. Where are McLaren then? Well, anyone's guess. Selling more advertisement space than they'll get coverage to actually to actually fill up the advertisers' quotas. I mean, heck, maybe that's one reason that, get a bit conspiratorial here, but maybe that's one reason that McLaren are performing so badly. If you're not going to be racing anyone at the front, well, might as well be so bad. Make a bit of a race at the back end to get some TV time if you make it good. Make the advertisers happy. But it'll be a whole different thing for McLaren when big boys Audi and Porsche come in. It'll be a whole different. Of course, McLaren don't want to actually do the Porsche deal. I think that'd be perfect for it, but they don't want to do it. Anyway, both Norris and Piastri will be leaving very quickly if McLaren don't actually come right sometime soon. Alright, I have made mention of possible covert clandestine operations to try and make Saudi Arabia or just the militant Middle East look incompetent in general with the whole with the untuned instruments for the Saudi Arabian national anthem. And I suppose this is as good a point as any to, well, put this into a video, I suppose. I'm sure everyone remembers Ben 10 getting himself into trouble and into hot water by mentioning a price for F1. Right now, you see, aside from the obvious problem of money is really not a thing to, like, the Middle Eastern oil to the Middle Eastern oil royalty and all of that. It's not a thing to them. Right. This is why right now you're seeing Qatar versus Jim Ratcliffe. Do I say Sir Jim Ratcliffe? Because I don't hear anyone saying Sir Lewis Hamilton. But the Qataris versus Jim Ratcliffe. You're seeing this whole thing play out at Manchester United. And, well, the powers that be, the Western kingmakers, they're desperate to not have any Middle Eastern ownership comes in. Problem is, the Middle East, they own more than half the oil. Huge problem. Huge problem. They have more than half the oil reserves of the planet just sitting over there. And so you're never going to beat them on money. And, you know, if they were to just say it how they want it, these Western kingmakers, that we don't want the Middle Easterns, the militant Muslim Middle Easterners coming in and owning these various apparatus that we've developed over here. We don't want them doing that because they're gonna upset our whole programming in regards to the alphabet mafia and all that. It's gonna upset the whole programming. Never mind the whole multicultural. Never mind that Islam is gonna overtake the whole multicultural project, because, well, Islam is a multicultural project anyway. But I digress. I digress, right? It's the how do I say this? Yeah, it's the opposite side of the same coin in regards to the global American empire versus Islam. It's the opposite side of the same coin. Right, the global American empire. Someone gonna get me in trouble for that. But their philosophy is Discordianism. Their philosophy is the abolition of culture. Right, their philosophy is arson, essentially cultural arson. Whereas the whole militant Muslims, their philosophy is all the way conservative. What I mean by that is it says it in the book, so so the book's accurate. And these two things can't coexist. They can be head of the same project, but the same project has different rules under them. But they are essentially vying for the same project. And like I said, the Western kingmakers, the powers that be, them, the Illuminati, the Committee of 300, whomsoever you want to name them. The deep state and what have you, they can't have any of these Middle Easterners coming in and running the money that they themselves gave them. They can't have that. And so you'll see various things like the band's instruments aren't tuned or something. You'll see various things like that crop up. I'm not entirely sure how useful such an exercise is, because they're putting on a whole Grand Prix. It's a night Grand Prix in a city, it's on a harbor. And the light show before the Grand Prix and during the Grand Prix, during the whole weekend, is crazy. So, it is what it is. I suppose they do it because it lands with various people out there. It does land. But anyway, if you're wondering why Ben 10 got himself in trouble, Ben Salam got himself in trouble when he mentioned the price for F1, it's because money means different things depending how much money you have. And to say the price of F1 is 20 billion, that's in budget. That's in budget for the Middle East. That's well out of pocket for anyone in the West, bar, I don't know, Bezos or an Elon Musk or what have you. But they would never buy F1 anyway. But anyway, this should be the vid. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Peace.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there. Hey, let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. Go! See, you really wanna pop me. Go! Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. Go! You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come, a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go, and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow, and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything about it. Boom, about a thing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that I always win, and then I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death, and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a ref, and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this, and I be banging on my chest, and I bang in the east, and I banging in the west, and I kinda give you more, and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street, and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it, and we all up in the race, and you know we gotta go now, try to keep up with the pace, and we struggling and hustling and set it, and I get it, and we always gotta do it, take it to another place, gotta taste it, and I gotta grab it, and I gotta cut all through